Let's get straight into that conversation. Joining me now live from Nairobi is Honorable Amadi. She's the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. Honorable Amadi, thank you for making time for us. So let's get straight into it. LSK has been complaining that the directive of closing the open courts has denied people justice, and it was done unilaterally. So what is the state of the courts right now?
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you for having us. Yes, the state of the court is that the courts are open, the courts are working, cases are being heard, judgments are being delivered, and nobody is being denied justice if they need it, especially if the case is of an urgent nature.
So how many cases would you say that has been dispensed with during this time? Because we know the open court sessions have been closed.
Up to now, we have done a total of 7,791 cases. This is right from the Supreme Court all the way to the magistrates' courts. So you can see that this is a figure that, out of a backlog of 349,000 cases, you can see that it's some significant amount of work is going on in all the courts at the moment.
So you've done 7,791 cases and there's a backlog of 349,000. That, by any measure, is not a success, Honorable Amadi.
Considering that we had a much higher backlog in the past, and in the past 1 year, there was over 150,000 cases done, and we are talking about 1 month under very difficult circumstances. That is good.
So how do you decide which cases are important and must be heard virtually? What kind of cases fall in that category?
Okay, these are cases that usually when a case is filed under certificate of urgency, the party decides that, my case is urgent, but again, it is the judge on duty to determine whether it falls within that urgent category. And this would be cases like, say, child maintenance cases. If a child needs to eat, a child needs to go to hospital and all that, that is not a matter that can wait. If you're being evicted from your property, that is urgent. If, say, somebody is building in your land and you need to stop them, that would fall under the urgent category. But it has to be accompanied by what is technically referred to as a certificate of urgency for the judge to, look at it on an urgent basis and make a determination.
So, Honorable Amadi, picture this. My case was scheduled to be heard on the 4th of April. That time has now passed. I didn't get a rescheduling of that case. Yes. It wasn't listed because at that time the courts were not open. So what happens to that particular case?
Yes. What happens is that there is a team that's working on a return to normalcy framework, because obviously we have downscaled a great deal for obvious reasons. And some of the things that we are thinking about at this early stage is to come up with a scheduling so that all the matters that should have been heard between 16th of March and whichever date we're going to reopen fully, we will have a way of reaching out to each particular litigant and indicating to them which day to come, because we're looking at a situation where, for example, if we said courts are to open on the 1st of July, as an example, and everybody rushes in on the same day, that would be dangerous. So we have to come up with a way where we know who's coming on what date, and we're asking that all litigants make an effort within this period to update their contacts with us. Currently, we take contacts of all our litigants so that we're able to reach them. Sometimes people change their contacts, so it will be very important that all our litigants update their contacts with us so that when we return to normalcy, we're able to reach out to each one of them and tell them which day to visit the registry, because we recognize that we must control the numbers when we go back to normalcy.
So I find that a bit technical because there are thousands of cases every day. And as we know right now, the judicial system has not exactly been digitized. How will you know which cases were supposed to be heard from the 16th of March to the end of COVID-19, which we don't really know right now?
Actually, our diary is e-diary. We know all the cases that are on the course list, and all the matters that are supposed to come up that are on the course list. Up to now, you can, if you visited the Kenya Law website, you'll be able to find all our course lists there. So the records of all the cases that are supposed to come up with us, and we know what is outstanding, what should have been had between 16th of March to whichever date that we're going to get back to work as normal. So that is not a problem at all. The records are there.
So on an ordinary day, how many cases are heard in court when things were normal and now that we're dealing with COVID-19? How does it compare?
Okay, how does it compare? I'd say we could be operating at about a third, because cases that require witnesses to attend court cannot be heard at the moment. And the reason is that we need to deal with the issue of social distancing and all other guidelines that have been set by the Ministry of Health. As we speak right now, the Ministry of Health has been undertaking a huge assessment process for all our courts. And I'm sure you know that all our courts are different in terms of sizes, in terms of character, how they're built, how they're spaced out. We have large courts, we have small courts. So we have to be advised on each and every court. And when we were doing Milimani last week, for example, we learned that the biggest court space that we have can take not more than 20 people at a time. That includes the judge, the lawyers, the witnesses, the parties. So we have to be sure that the space is safe before we can allow cases with witnesses to begin to proceed. For now, we are only dealing with cases that do not require witnesses. This would include applications, this would include appeals, both civil and criminal, because at appeal level, no witnesses are heard. So any case that requires a witness to come in has been deferred for the time being until we're ready.
So now my worry here is the difference in size that you've just talked about. Are we looking at a situation where the courts have to be re-engineered to ensure social distancing because there'll be an influx of people trying to get their case listed on a different day? In re-engineering, not really, because we can't really expand the sizes of our courts, but we'll need to know how many people can be attended to in a given courtroom at a particular time, because that is what will guide how to schedule the matters. And remember, we'd have to even do, in a sense, a physical count of the number of people required for a particular case to be done. In some situations where the courts are really small and the courtrooms are very small, especially in spaces where, in courts where magistrates and judges use their chambers also as courtrooms, we may have to consider doing the cases even outside. For example, we may need to consider having temporary arrangements, so that people can still access justice within the facilities that are available. Because in some places, we don't even have the courtrooms. There are court stations where you have 2 courtrooms and 4 judicial officers. So then what happens? So we will need to be creative and even see how to get alternative spaces for these matters to proceed. Yeah. Have you thought about how social distancing will be achieved when the open courts resume?
That's exactly what we're doing with the Ministry of Health right now. They have visited about 80% of our courts as at last week. I did not check the update for what they covered today, and we're expecting a report by the end of this week. And the report is going to be specific about each and every court, all the 125 stations that we have across the country. They will be telling us how many people can be attended to in a particular courtroom, in a particular registry, in the waiting bays, how many people can, for example, we're being told what we need to have in Milimani at every corridor, at every turn of the building. So once they tell us what to do, because we do not, right now, we do not know what is the right thing to do, and we don't want to assume anything and endanger people's lives, we will have to wait for this report to come. As I said, we are expecting it later this week, and we will implement it to the letter.
So if these litigants whose cases were supposed to be heard, but because of COVID-19, their cases were not heard, and then they don't get, you don't reach out to them, what should they do? Because some of them may not get that call that you're talking about.
Okay. What they should do is this. At every court station, we have what we call first of all, we have what's it called? A customer service address that they can use to reach us. We also have the court users committees at the court stations, which is our kind of an accountability framework for court stations. We have court users committees in all court stations where people can actually send their complaints, their concerns, and they will be addressed. And just to say, to let the public know what court users committees are, at the national level, we have what we call the National Council on the Administration of Justice. And the work of the council, which really brings together all justice sector players, it's chaired by the Honorable the Chief Justice. The members include the Inspector General of Police, the Commissioner General of Prisons, the Director of Criminal Investigations, the DPP, all the players, the LSK, civil society organizations, and they give guidance on what should happen at policy level. So then at court station level, the NCJ is mirrored in the court users committees. So anybody with a problem, this is a good framework for us to use in terms of reaching out to the entire justice system, so to speak, not just the judiciary. We know that when people come to court and they have a challenge, whether it's with the police or with the DPP, with probation, just by the fact that they're in court, the buck tends to stop with us. Because if I have a matter and I'm in court, then it is a problem of the court. Yeah. We normally will not segregate and say the problem is with the IG or with the DPP or whichever other agency. Yeah. So this is the CUC is a good framework to use because it's a framework that brings together all the players, including the LSK, to help us. And each and every court has one of those court users committees.
So, Honorable Amadi, what usually happens is that when you get a court date on the 4th of April, say, for example, and somebody else got a court date that is earlier than me on the 3rd maybe or so, are you going to have to restructure the entire case, and will you be able to prioritize the most urgent cases when now the judicial system reopens?
As I said earlier, there is a team working on that. And yes, we will want to prioritize cases that should have been heard during this period and were not heard. And we'll also be exploring how to also apply other forms of dispute resolution just to try and deal with the backlog that will have been created. We will be looking at applying alternative justice systems, mediation. We'll be looking at, we had planned from early next year, the next fiscal year starting July, to start operationalizing these small claims courts so that we can have some of the small claims dealt with faster and gotten out of the way. So we will have to look at other creative ways, innovative ways of just trying to fast-track the cases within the resources that we have, also considering that we have very, very few judicial officers to deal with very, very many cases, the numbers that I indicated at the beginning.
So how are you going to ensure that you reach all the litigants? Because you mentioned phone calls, some of them may be off air, offline. So are you going to send emails? How are you going to reach the litigants whose cases are supposed to be heard?
Okay, this is what happens. In criminal cases, everybody has a date. If your matter was supposed to have been done and it wasn't heard, then you have a mention date. So when you come for your mention, then you will be given a date for the hearing. In civil cases, the litigants tend to take the dates themselves. In this situation, we're saying we don't want a situation where everybody is rushing to the registry to take dates on the same day. For those that will not be able to reach, which is likely to be the case because we know that sometimes people change their numbers, lose their phones, we will have to deal with them as they come to seek for assistance. Because if you have a case in court, then you have a responsibility also to follow up. So when you come, your matter will be addressed as they come because as you rightly point out, it will not be possible to get everybody on phone. So there are those who will come physically and they will be guided on when to come to fix their date in the registry. Okay. We will not allow people to just come to the registries in large numbers because that could be dangerous.
Okay. So earlier on, the CJ sent a memo that some of the judges have actually been taking advantage of this situation to delay the cases even further. He also directed that all the cases must now be dealt with by the end of May. How many cases are pending and how many have been dealt with so far? And will you manage to beat that May deadline?
I think what the Chief Justice referred to was the judgments. He did not say all cases because just the numbers that I've shared will tell you that it is not possible to finish all those matters by May. But what he had said is that any pending judgments should be written. And a lot of judgments have been written and delivered. If I just give you a few examples, the High Court, for example, has finalized about 1,015 judgments, out of which 615 have been delivered. The rest are awaiting delivery. The Environment and Land Court has delivered 388 judgments. Magistrates in total have delivered 4,390 judgments and rulings. So you can see that a lot of work is being done in terms of just finishing the judgments, and we're very optimistic that by the time we resume our normal operations, there will be very few, if any, judgments outstanding. I think that judicial officers, judges are putting a lot of effort in ensuring that judgments are written and completed so that when they start work, the normal operations, then they will not be talking about, long outstanding judgments.
So what happens to judges who don't comply, who don't end up finishing their judgment and their ruling?
Okay, that now becomes a disciplinary issue, which is a matter for the Judicial Service Commission. So if there are any of those cases, and I don't think there are any, just looking at the trends, then that would now be a matter for the JEC to deal with.
And many Kenyans are wondering, it's the 21st century and the courts are yet to go digital. Why is it taking so long?
All the courts are digital, Trevor. All the courts are digital. Judgments are being heard, delivered. Applications are being heard every day. So maybe what we should be talking about is standardizing it and upscaling it to the level that we want. Because all these numbers that I'm talking about of the matters that have been heard during this period have been done through video link. Criminal applications, the Court of Appeal, for example, did 35 hearings of very vulnerable people. These are litigants that are in jail, They don't have lawyers, and they are in Garissa, in Kitengela, in Kodiaga, in Kibos, in Kamiti. And it was all done digitally. So we are there. All we need is really to upscale that.
And then we've seen also cases that take up to about 10 years in the corridors of justice. And just before we move on from the whole digitization part, we still see judges writing down their cases in pen and paper, but you say that all the courts are digital now? That doesn't seem...
Yes, that is an area where we've had a struggle. I admit that. We've had a few false starts, and it's something that we are working on. We acknowledge that we have some internal capacity issues, and that is something that is actually right now on the entry of the Judicial Service Commission, but initial work has started. In certain divisions of the High Court, like the Commercial Division, there is some level of success in that, and a few other courts, and we expect to upscale this.
So what is the plan now as we stand? Are we going to just have all the active cases digitized, or what is the way forward for the judiciary in this digitization plan?
Yes, we do have a strategy to digitalize all our courts. Some of the challenges we've had relate to resources. And in fact, as we speak, when the supplementary budget was done recently, one of the areas that suffered the most was the ICT budget. So we have a plan. Execution of that plan relies a lot, again, on the resources that we get. But the commitment is there, and the roadmap is clear on what we want to achieve. It was actually the Chief Justice's dream that by the time he finishes his term, all the pens would be down. We haven't been very successful in that regard, but I can assure you that all the measures have been put in place, and if we get the resources, then we should be able to achieve that as well.
And yet in the supplementary budget, there are even more cuts to the judiciary. How then will that affect the dispensation of justice?
Yes, it will affect exactly what you're talking about. It will affect our ICT efforts a great deal because a good chunk of what was taken away actually was of the ICT budget. So that is something that we have to contend with. For now, we continue to negotiate with the authorities and the agencies that deal with the budget issues, and we hope that we will be able to make progress on that.
So I have a question here from Bezaira. He says, ask CRN, how long will it take for someone to get summons, since I have tried through my lawyer to get a stamp and signature so that we can serve the defendant for the past 3 weeks in vain?
The summons actually should come out immediately. And I don't know what the challenge could be on that one. I would advise the caller to just write to us through customer service at court.go.ke, and we'll be able to address her issue. That shouldn't happen at all. It's something that should be able to get immediately. We'll need to find out what the challenge is.
Yeah, and on Twitter still, Stephen Mutoro is saying that he's listening to you explaining how you're going to deal with the backlog of cases, but he's afraid that you will face a serious backlog because it will be a huge challenge to determine and schedule urgent versus cases that could have been heard or determined earlier.
Yeah, that's a challenge, and it's not a challenge that we could, is within our control. COVID was not foreseen, and just giving the numbers that we have, the numbers of judicial officers vis-a-vis the cases that we have, it's a challenge that we'll have to deal with. But on the positive side, what we have seen is this, that in the past we have been applying resources to what we call service weeks, where we have judges and magistrates go and support a particular court to clear their backlog. And it comes with a huge cost. But we've seen that through the video link processes that we've been applying, it will be possible to actually undertake service weeks without moving from our stations. And just depending on how we deal with that, we might be able, to some extent, to deal with this backlog that is being created right now. Of course, before we downscaled our operations, we had also, the Judicial Service Commission had approved the recruitment of more magistrates because we really, really need numbers. The approval is there, but we put the whole process on hold because of what is going on now. And we think that with more hands to do the work, we should be able to eat into some of that backlog. We also want to believe that the judges who were nominated by the JAC and yet to be appointed will be appointed, so that we have more hands to do the work at hand.
Yeah.
Because as it is, we are grossly understaffed as well.
And that's exactly where Dunstan Omari's question is, because he's wondering if you will admit new advocates digitally.
Admitting new advocates digitally, it's something we haven't thought about. That would be interesting. It's something to think about. If COVID doesn't go away, we will have to see how to do it, because as you know, right now the numbers are very high. We admit about 200 advocates at a time in a small space. And of course, being committed to the guidelines that we are receiving from the Ministry of Health, we would not want to do that. And it's not something we've thought about, but yes, it's something that we can think about.
Yeah, because there were still, with the budget cuts, came the lack of judges affecting the courts there. How will this play out then when the rush begins? Is this something you're concerned about? Because I don't see how practical this is going to work. You're dealing with cut budgets, you're dealing with low numbers of judges, you're dealing with low numbers of advocates, and then there's the full blast reopening of the courts.
Yes, we will have to work with the resources that we have. It just means that it will take slightly longer to do less work. If we have the resources, if we have, both human and financial, we'll be able to do more. So we will do what we're able to do within the resources that we have. And for as long as our budgets remain where they are, the public can only expect so much.
Okay. Speaking of doing what you can, we have seen instances where the ODPP and the DCI seem to be reading from different scripts, like the former KPA MD case that was there. The DPP says they did not approve the charges, but the DCI presented him in court anyway. How is this affecting the dispensation of justice?
Okay. From what we see, I think the DCI and the DPP are working together well, and they continue to bring cases to court because the courts will only deal with the cases that have been brought before it. The internal workings between the DPP and the DCI, we really are not privy to it. And I think it would be best, that's a question that would be best put to the two particular agencies, because as judiciary, we wouldn't know. We will only deal with what they present before us once they have done their work.
So as far as you're concerned, the warfare doesn't seem to affect the judiciary?
If there is warfare, we wouldn't be privy to it at all.
All right. Stay with me, Honorable Amadi. We are taking a quick break here. When we come back, several Kenyans sent in their questions via video, so we'll pose some of them to you.